This is Gemara in Sotah Daf Mem Hey. We're holding on Mem Daled Amid Beis, beginning of the Gemara as we get into this new net parak, the 9th parak, wrapping up Baruch Hashem Meseches Sotah. Parak Egla Arufa, in which we began yesterday, is teaching us the intricate halachas of the Egla Arufa, of a case in which someone is found dead, and thereby the elders of the city have to go out and decapitate an egla, as we're going to see in Mirz Hashem, as we're going to see as we go through the chapter, this parak, exactly what is the egla rufa, what are the scenarios you have to say it, etc., etc. So yesterday we began by learning the Mishnah, and now we pick it up from the Gemara. Says the Gemara, my ka'amar, let's get that highlighting on. Says the Gemara, my ka'amar, what is this halacha we said regarding it has to be said b'lashon hakodesh. When we began the Mishnah, we brought a pasuk, and the question obviously is that pasuk doesn't seemingly indicate anywhere that the psukim have said b'lashon hakodesh. So Amar Ravu Achi Kamar Shenemar V'anu V'amru. The pasuk says they should answer and they should say, Ulalanu Oimer, and elsewhere it says, V'anu Halaviyim V'amru V'goimer. Ma'ani Amur La'alam B'lashon HaKodesh Avkan B'lashon HaKodesh. Just like the Halaviyim had to be said B'lashon HaKodesh, so too over here. V'seider Egla Arufa Kisad. And now the Mishnah continues on what is the order of the Egla Arufa. Ki matzachal b'adam, if you found a dead corpse on the ground. V'yatzu zikinech, and the elders go out, v'shaftech, and the judges, shleisha mi bezdin agol, shu Yushalayim ayoyitsin. 3 from the great bezdin Yushalayim would go out. So there's a line in the Mishnah that we're inserting. The Mishnah says it's b'lashon hakodesh. How do we know that? We learn from the Levim. Now we continue reading the Mishnah. Now the Mishnah continues reading the process of the Egla Arufa, ki matzachal ba'adama, etc. Rav Yehuda Aimer Chamish, Rav Yehuda says that 5 shoftim would go out to measure. They're measuring the distance between this corpse and the surrounding city. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabban, Rav Yehuda zikenecha v'shavtecha, zikenecha shnayim, is 2 shavtecha shnayim, vein bezdin shakam, ma'asifin aleim moidecha, you can't have an equal bezdin. So 2 and 2 is 4, you need one more, so you have 5. Very kind of Chamisha, the Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon Aimer, zikenecha shnayim, vein bezdin shakal, so therefore you need one more. Ma'asifin aleim moidecha, Arikan Shleisha, says Rav Shimon. Asks the Gemara, the obvious kasha of Rav Shimon, aksiv v'shavtecha. What does Rav Shimon do with the pasuk of Rav Yehuda that says v'shavtecha? Answers the Gemara, you know what he needs that for? L'miyuchadim shev'shavtecha. The fact that the pasuk spells out shavtecha, Rav Shimon learns out, you know what it means? It means the special, the miyuchad shavtecha, which is discussing the Sanhedrin Hagadol Shev Yushalayim. For Rav Yehuda, so how does he know that it's the Sanhedrin Hagadol? Says the Gemara, 4 lines on the bottom, Ziknei Ziknecha Nafka, Rav Shimon, because of Ziknei, Havamin Afilu Ziknei Hashok. I would have thought that it doesn't have to be Dafka, a judge. I would think, says Rav Shimon, even a Zakein that's in the marketplace, because of Rachman is Ziknecha, your elders, because Rachman is Ziknecha, Havamin Afilu Sanhedrin Kitana. Because Rachman v'shavtecha l'miyuchadim sheb'shavtecha, Sanhedrin Hagadol, says Rav Shimon. Rav Yehuda, Kamar ziknei miziknei ha'ida. Mal halon, just like by the ziknei ha'ila, miyuchadin shebe'ida. Avka miyuchadin shebe'ida. Says the Gemara, Igamar, if Rav Yehuda learns the Gzeir Shava between the case of the shoftim shebe'ida, which is by the karban, when the Sanhedrin makes a mistake, likamri lekule. Milsa, says the Gemara, so why doesn't Rav Yehuda learn the whole parsha from their me'asim? Zekinecha v'shavtecha lamali. So if Rav Yehuda has the Gzeir Shava equating the 2 cases, why does the Torah have to spell out Zekinecha v'shavtecha at all? Says the Gemara, Vav v'shavtecha l'minyana. Ella, we have to answer that according to Rav Yehuda, the extra Vav is l'minyana, and that's where Rav Yehuda gets it, that it's going to be 5 judges. The 2 for Zikenecha, another 2 for v'shavtecha. You can't have a bezdin shakal, you add on 1 more and you get 5. For Rav Shimon, so what does Rav Shimon say? As we turn over to Mem Hey Amid Aleph, Says the Gemara of Rav Shimon, Vav loy mashmalei. Rav Shimon doesn't darshin the extra Vav. Ask the Gemara, Elamayata. Now, if this is true, v'yatzu shnayim, to go out, umadadu shnayim, and two are going to measure, says the pasuk. The Rav Yehuda, Rekan Teisha, you should have 9 judges now. The Rav Shimon, Rekan Sheva. So again, what's the kasha? From the fact that the pasuk says v'yatzu, the fact that the pasuk says umadadu, each one in the plural, seemingly is adding on that each one points to another 2 judges. So ask the Gemara, it comes out fascinating that according to Rav Yehuda, we should have another 4, so up to 9. According to Rav Shimon, you have another 4, up to 7. So where does the Mishnah get that it's machlekes 3 and 5? It should be 9 and 7. Answers the Gemara, no. Those extra words of v'yatzu and umadadu, you need those for something else. As the Brisa says, v'yatzu, and they go out, hein v'lo shluchein. They themselves have an obligation to go out. They can't send a shliach. Umadadu, what does that mean? Shafilu nimsa ba'alil le'ir. Even if the corpse is found, and it's alil. Alil is a lashon of that it's clear. Even if it's clear that the corpse is closer to one city, so maybe you would think you don't have to measure it. Still, it says that what? That the measurement is not just a practical detail. Which city is the corpse closer? No, we have a mitzvah to do this medida. So that's really part A, which is dealing with the number of Zikinecha Shevtecha, the number of Jews, of Yidden, of judges that are going out to measure by the Egla Arufa. Now, says the Gemara, so our Mishnah learned that who are these people going out? The Sanhedrin Agadol. Says the Gemara, Masni said the Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, Ditanya, we learned to the Brisa 10 lines down. First word line is ben Yaakov. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, Aimer, Zikeinecha, Zu Sanhedrin, V'Shavtecha, Zemelech, V'Koyin Gadol. Melech, the same Melech by Mishpat Yamoid Aret. So we see that the Melech is used with the word Mishpat. Koyin Gadol, the same Ubasa, like Koyan Melavim, Melech Shevet Sheyabim. So we see that the word Koyin is used with Shevet as well. So says the Gemara, Vlaz ben Yaakov holds, it's not just the Stam Sanhedrin that goes out. Sanhedrin together with the Melech and together with the Koyin Gadol. So ask the Gemara on Rav Vlaz ben Yaakov, Ibayilahu. Rav Elazar ben Yaakov v'melech v'koyin gadol hu depalik. Aval b'Sanhedrin, when it comes to Sanhedrin, Ikir Rav Yehuda, Ikir Rav Shimon Tzvirle, he holds either 3 or 5 of the members of the Sanhedrin. O Yidilma Sanhedrin nami blalik. Ad Ika Kula Sanhedrin. Meaning, Rav Elazar ben Yaakov learned out Zikrinecha Zu Sanhedrin Nikuda. So what does it mean Zu Sanhedrin? Does it mean as the aforementioned numbers of Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon, either 3 or 5 judges? Or does it mean no, Sanhedrin? The ganze Sanhedrin goes according to Rav ben Yaakov and the Melech and the Koyin Gadol. That is the Shaila of the Gemara. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef Tashma, let's bring a raya. It says in the Brisa, Matzu Zakin Mamrei. If the Zakin Mamrei found Avi Abei Pagei v'himri aleim. If the Zakin Mamri, a Zakin, an elder, a Talmid Chacham that went off the derech, if he found the great Sanhedrin Abei Pagi and he received the halacha from them and then he rebelled against them, you would think that it's called a rebellion. There's specific halachas as we're seeing of a zaken mamre. It's not stam a zaken that acts incorrectly. It's that the zaken has to have heard the halacha from the Sanhedrin and then God went against it. So says the Gemara, you would think that if he heard a halacha in Beis Pagi and then he goes and he doesn't listen, that's called a hamara. That's called a rebellion. He gets the label of zaken mamre. Is chayiv misa. Ta'amalaymar says the Torah, no. They come to Valis al Makim. You have to go up to the place. What does this teach us? That the place causes Sanhedrin, and only there, when the Sanhedrin are seated in the original place, does he have a din of the Zaken Mamrei. Only when they're in the Lishkas Hagazis. So says the Gemara, Dinafik mima kama. Let's figure this out. How many people of the Sanhedrin, how many members went out from the Lichtai Gazin to Beis Pagi? Meaning, in this Hava Amina, that when the Zaken Mamre meets the Sanhedrin in Beis Pagi, and he hears the halacha and he doesn't listen, he has the status of a Zaken Mamre. How many members of the Sanhedrin were there? If you're going to tell me that the case is that some of them went out, then it's Pashit. It's Pashit doesn't have a din of Zakin Mamri, because Zakin Mamri is only if he goes against the entire Sanhedrin. In this case, maybe not. Maybe those remaining members in the Lichkai Gazis would concur with the Zakin. They're all standing in Beis Pagi. And why did they leave the Lichkai Gazis? Is the Sanhedrin allowed to leave for an optional purpose? The Pasuk says, Sharich Agan Asar Al Yechzar Amazek, that your navel is like a moon-shaped basin. Let not the strength of the blend be lacking. And what does this interesting and complicated Pasuk teach us? If one of them needs to leave, if there's 23 judges that are still going to be there after this one leaves, I'm sorry, we just lost the page of the Gemara. Then what? He's allowed to leave. So again, one member of the Sanhedrin needs to go. So if there's 23 behind, then he's allowed to leave. Vim lav, if there's not going to be 23 remaining, what's the halacha? He's not allowed to leave. So says the Gemara, so what's going on over here? How could it be that they're all leaving for Dvarishos? It must be that why did the whole Sanhedrin leave the Lishkas Hagazis to Beis HaMikdash? Why are they all hanging out over here in Beis Pagi? It must be why? Because they went for Dvar Mitzvah. Lemai, what mitzvah is incumbent upon the entire Sanhedrin to leave the Lishkas Hagazis? Lav lemedidas egla. Is it not to measure the egla rufa? And who is the opinion that says you need the whole Sanhedrin? It's not Rav Yehuda that said you need 5 sekenim. It's not Rav Shimon that said you need 3. Rather, whom is it? Rav Lazar ben Yaakov. So the Gemara wants to prove a bit of a long raya. But Rav Lazar ben Yaakov, not only does he hold that the Melech and the Kohen Gadol has to go out to measure for the egla rufa, but as well the entire Sanhedrin. Amar le'a Abaya, 8 lines on the wide lines, like you know, they went out to add on to the city of Yerushalayim or to the chaseris of the Beis HaMikdash. You need all 71 members of the Bezdin to do that. Tanya Kavasei Rav Yosef. Now we have a raya to Rav Yosef. That what? Rav Yosef was the one that learned that according to Vlad ben Yaakov, you need the entire Sanhedrin for the Eglah Rufa. Matan Avi Matan Beis Pagi Vimra Aleim, a similar price that we find the Sanhedrin on Beis Pagi, and he rebels against him. The price says explicitly they went out to measure the Agala. So he can't be called the Zakin Mamri, but we see explicitly a brisa that the entire Sanhedrin have to go out for the measuring of the Egla Arufa. Continues the Gemara on the first very wide line. If the corpse is found buried in the sand or hanging from a tree, it does not have a din of Egla Arufa. Lema Mas Nisan, says the Gemara, Rav Yehudi, Rabbanan. You forget Oimer in the field. This means if it's hidden, the rabbi says to include even that which is covered over. So in our Mishnah learned that when it says that the halal, that the corpse has to be ba'adama, which comes to exclude if the corpse is tam when it's buried, seemingly with Rav Yehuda, who says that it means to exclude something that's buried. Amarav afilu temara bana no raya. Hacha meinyana dekra, asa meinyana dekra. Each pasuk is darshaned due to the context. Techsev kimat chalal heichad mishkach be'adama pralatam. V'hasa meinyana dekra techsev ki siksa kisirecha. You cut down your cuttings basada in the field. V'shachach aimer, and you've left over the aimer. Dumya dekasir maketzir begali avshilcha begali. Kas rachmana bisadeh. So the pasuk continues and says, "Basada l'rabbis es hatamot." Gemara says we do not have a raya. But the Gemara continues that according to Rav Yehuda, the Rav Yehuda Nami, 5 lines into the white lines, typically may shicha tumya dekatzir. Why does Rav Yehuda learn that the din of shicha, that if you forget something else, if you forget something on the field, has to be similar to the katzir that has to be revealed? Why does he need another pasuk of basadeh? Inachanami, you're right. Velo basadeh lamalis. What does he do with that pasuk? Mibayilei the Rabbi Shicha comes to exclude the standing grains. What does he do with that pasuk? He needs it for a different josh. Parat. You know what it comes to exclude? It comes to exclude when the sheaves floated to the field of his friend, and there's no din of shicha on them. And those are the joshais between Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim. So now that we mentioned the halachas of shicha, that if you leave something over in the field as you're collecting your grain, the halacha is you have to leave it for the aniyim. Bai Rav Yirmiyah, we pick it up with a similar shayla. Safu amar in the Tichsadeyu, if sheaves floated into one's field, says the Gemara, what is the halacha? Are they considered shecha? Do we say Avir Sadik is Sadadami, that the airspace feels like the field, and therefore you have to leave them from the poor, just like it's on the ground? The fact that they're floating there doesn't make a difference. Or Lav Kisadami, or maybe not. Let's bring a right from Ravu, Rav Laza Damar. That's when it's not shecha. So we have a clear raya that it would be shecha. Says the Gemara, we should also be medayik. It's only if it floated there, not if it's placed there. Has to be in your field. Really, you're right. So why did the Brisa list the case of floating? Because that was only the normal case that we were able to find such a scenario. And with that, we continue. Ta Shema. Let's try to bring a raya. 10 lines from the bottom. The first one line is Ta. Someone took a bundle, some stalks of grain to take it to the town. And he put it on top of another sheaf. And so now he has one on top of another, and then he forgot that the bottom one was there. And he left the bottom one. Incorrect. One more time. And he left it, put one on top of the next, and then he left it. And what's the halacha? Shecha. Ha'elyon einay shecha. The bottom one is yes shecha, not the top one. Shemen Yehuda, I remember Shemen Shneim ain't shecha neither shecha. Tachton, why not? Neshu Talmud. The halacha that we learned before, that if something is hidden, you can't have a din of shecha. So if one sheath, one bundle, one stalks are covering the other one, it's called Talmud. Ha'elyon neshu saf. And the top one, why? Because says the Gemara, because it is floating on the bottom one. So that's the raya. Says Gemara, no raya. Shani also keep the echslik bay. What if say that exemption keep him a bit in the field itself? Answers the Gemara, ha nami. You're right. It says because it's floating. Sounds like it's the chiddush of the top part of the grain. Because it's like it is floating, and that's the reason why we can't learn from this a brisa. So says the Gemara, Amar Habayi. Harenika ben Azai b'shukei Tiveria. 3 lines from the bottom. So it says, I am like Ben Azai. I am like Ben Azai in the Shuk of Tiveria. Ben Azai answered all the questions that were there. So one of the Rabbanan says to Abaye, Shnei chalalim zal gavzeh. If we have 2 chalalim, we have 2 dead bodies. Zel gavzel, one on top of another. Mehechan hu moidid. How do you measure? We're trying to measure for Egla Arufa. We have two corpses. How do you measure it? Min b'minai have a tamun. Do we say that Lamaisa it has a din of tamun because one corpse is on top of the next? Or min b'minai loy have a tzaf. But something that is on top of the other, it's not considered that it is floating because it's lying on its own item. It's one corpse on the next. And therefore, what? So you're going to measure from the top corpse. And obviously this can be a few inches, but that can make the difference from which town this body is closer. And therefore, and therefore, or now we even have a third option. Meaning, and they're both excluded. So Abaye tried to figure out what is the story with regard to Egla Arufa when we have two corpses, one floating on top, or I shouldn't say floating, can't actually float, one lying on top of the next. So Amar Lei, so he responds, Teni Tua. If someone has an oimer, someone has a sheath of grain in order to take it to the ear, and he places it on his friend, not on his friend, on another sheaf, another ear of grain, and then he left it. So what's the halacha regarding to shikha? The bottom one has din of shikha, but not the top one. Rashi ben Yehuda Omer says Rashi ben Yehuda Mishum Rav Shimon Shneim Einon Sheicha. Neither of them are. Why not? Hatachtoim they shoot tamun. V'elyoin they shoot soft because the top one is floating. And again, let's just point out when we say this word floating, it doesn't mean really floating, right? You could have something floating on water. You could have something floating in the air, and then you could have something that the fact that it's not on the ground is called floating. Meaning, if I have this little bag over here sitting on my hand, it's floating. What do you mean it's floating? It's sitting on my hand, right? But with relation to the ground, it's called floating. So when we say by us that these things are floating, all it means is that it's not on the ground. So now explains the Gemara, how does this answer the kasha? Savrua, 6 lines down, Danita like Rav Yehuda, Tzvile, they all like Rav Yehuda, the Amar, Sotah, that when the Brasik says Bisa, the Bralatam, when it comes to exclude something hidden. My love, so what is the machlekes tanikama? And Rashi ben Yehuda says the Gemara, Timar Savar Rashi ben Yehuda holds Min b'minoi have ta'in, Umar Savar lo have tamun. So we're now answering up one of the questions. Whether we say Min b'minoi is going to be tamun or not, the Gemara is explaining is going to be subject to this machlekes Tanakama and Rav Yishimon Rav Yehuda. Says the Gemara loy that is not the machlekes. Rav Yehuda. If you want to tell me that they both hold like Rav Yehuda, that what? Saying that is covered, saying that is tamun, is not shicha. So then we can explain the kuli amin b'minoi have a tamun. Over here it's tamun because it's covered with its own type. It's covered with another bundle. So what's the machlekes Tanakama and Rav Shimon Yehuda is a different machlekes. The machlekes between Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanon. The Rabbanon. Kirabanan. Rav Yishim Yehuda, Kirav Yehuda. Says the Gemara, if this is true, Yachi Mayri al Gabi Chaviravilu Ba'afar Ubitzara Nami. Says the Gemara, it sounded like in the case that it was a din specific that A was on top of B, but says the Gemara that we're explaining right now, just because it's covered, it's going to be the same din if it's covered with dirt and with pebbles. Answers the Gemara, it's true. So why did it say this case? The chiddush in Rav Yehuda that min b'minoi is considered covered. The fact, even though it's covered with its own type. Tanu Rabbanan continues the Gemara about 15 lines down. The first one line is afilu min b'minoi. Says the Gemara chalal darshan in case of egla arufa, dead corpse, v'loy chanuk, but not if the body was killed by choking. Strangulation, halal, v'loy mifarfer, has to be a dead corpse and have a farfer still writhing in pain. Ba'adam the ground below tamun, and not that it's hidden begal in a pile of stones. No fell. Pasuk says that it's fallen. V'loy talabila hanging from a tree. Besadev lo tzaf al bnei hamayim. Rav Lazar Aimer. Bekulan in all these cases, if it was chalal, says Rav Lazar more. Broad a din, if it was something that was killed by a metal instrument, artipin, then there's a din of egla arufa in regard to all the other dinim. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Rav Elazar, you're telling me that in all cases, as long as the body is killed by a metal instrument, is din of egla rufa. Tanya, Rav Yosi, Rav Yehuda. Amru Rav Elazar, do you not admit? Do you not admit that if it was strangled and lying in a trash heap, that there's no din of egla rufa? Alma, what do we see? Chalav lo chanuk. We see that some level you agree with the drasha that it was halal, that it was killed, but not it was strangled. So achanami, so we should as well extend it to what? Ba'adama, v'lotamin begal, noiva v'lotamin lilan v'sadol zaval gavimayim. Says the Gemara, so how does Rav Elazar respond? Rav Elazar, chalal yisei ksiv, there's an extra word chalal in the pasuk. We continue quoting the Mishnah, 4 lines to the wide lines. If we find a dead body near a town, or that it's mostly, tzamach lasfar, near the border of Eretz Yisrael, or to a town that's mostly occupied by Goyim, then there's no din of egla rufa. If it will be found, which comes in two cases where they're commonly found, these are cases, unfortunately, the border of Eretz Yisrael, and near a city of Goyim that is commonly corpses. Says Gemara, why is there no din of egla rufa in that case? Pshita, asks the Gemara. Since answers the Gemara, since the Mishnah said, it's part of the kasha, since the Mishnah said the case of a city that doesn't have a bezdin, so obvious implication is there's only going to be a din of egla rufa if there is a bezdin. Answers the Gemara, Akamash no the Chadish is lan Kiditanya Minai and Shem Nimsa Samach Lear Shein Babaz in Shemini Chanesa. You leave it on my din Lear Sheish Babaz did, meaning if you have two cities nearby that you measure to one, not the other time. Mikal Makups. You're right, says the Gemara. In the simple din, it would seem that we knew this din already, but the Chiddush is when there are two potential towns to measure it towards. We continue with the Mishnah, 3 lines into the wide lines on Mem Heya Mid Beis. Nimsa Mechavin Beishtei Yaris. What happens if this dead body is exactly between the two cities? Shtei and Mevias Shtei Agalois Divir Avalaz is 2 dinim. You bring 2 egla arufas, 2 calves, 1 for each town. Ve'ein Yushalayim Mevian egla arufa. Says the Mishnah, Yushalayim never brings an egla arufa, but rather whichever town is closest, they're going to bring it. Let's say we find a dead body. The head is in one place and the body is in another place. We put the body head next to the body, and that's where the egla arufa closest to the body is, says Rav Eliezer. It goes after the head. From where do you measure, says the Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Rav Eliezer Omer mitiburai, from his navel, Rav Akiva Omer michaytmei, from his nose, from the place that he becomes a chola corpse, which is, we measure from his neck. So says the Gemara, my time of the Rav Eliezer. Where is Rav Eliezer's reasoning that he says that if it's a smack between 2 towns, the halach is you have to bring 2 of them? The reason is Rav Eliezer holds that really you could be precise, and therefore it's possible to know that it's mamish in between, and therefore a kroiva, when it says you bring the town closest brings egla rufa, afilu kroivais, even 2 towns which are close by. We continue, and we're going to conclude. Maybe egla rufa, says the Gemara 8 lines down. Why damar kra the rasa? Yushalayim was never really given over to the Shvatim, and therefore the fact that the pasuk says that if there's going to be a halal in a place that Hashem gives you l'resh saw to inherit that land, and Eretz Yisrael is not considered a land that we inherit. Nimsa Rosh Makam Echad, and the body's in another Makam. Says the Gemara, what is this machlekes? If you put the body by the head or the head by the body? If you're going to tell me the machlekes regard to measuring kamifli, Seifa, then the Mishnah says, Mina Yamoidim Echad Reisha, Loivim Medina Askina, and it sounds like the Mishnah is not dealing with this detail. So Amar Rav Yitzchak, you know what's going on. B'meis mitzvah, Kana Mekaime Kamifli, does a meis mitzvah acquire this place? Vachi Kamar. Lekaivrai, Kana Mekaime. Ve'echad, the names are Roisha, B'makam Echad, Ve'gufai, B'makam Acher, Ve'lichan Roish, it's like if you put the bed next to the body, Divrei Rav Eliezer. Rav Akiva Omer, Agov Eitzel Roish, B'mai Kamifli, Mars of Argufa, B'dichtei Nafel, Reisha, Denaidi V'nafel. The body fell where the person was killed, and his head just rolled away. No, the head, wherever the head fell, that's where it fell. Kufu derad azel, but the body continues to run. Even after the head is chopped off, the body continues to run. We can envision a chicken that we've seen this in, and that's the reason why it goes after the head. And we're going to stop over here and we'll pick it up from Ein Ayah Moedin in the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.